The views expressed by the speakers of CamaPlan podcasts are those of the speakers only and may not reflect those of Cama, its members, or employees. Cama does not guarantee the accuracy of information provided by these speakers. Professional advisors should be consulted before implementing any options presented. Cama absolutely does not endorse or recommend any individual or organization, including the speakers. Cama, its members, and employees do not accept liability for losses and/or damages arising from errors or omissions within, reliance upon, or any use of the information provided by the speakers. Individuals are strongly encouraged by Cama to conduct their own due diligence before making any investment choices. Cama does not act as, nor offer the services of, an investment advisor, CPA, realtor, or attorney. If tax, legal, accounting, investment, or other similar expert assistance is required, the services of a competent professional should be sought. Hello and welcome back to The Road to Financial Freedom, a podcast that allows experts to share their stories and secrets to unlocking financial independence. This podcast is brought to you by CamaPlan, a self-directed IRA administrator in Ambler, Pennsylvania that is focused on educating investors with different ways to grow their retirement savings faster through alternative investments. And today is our first recording from the office, but our guests are continuing to record with us remotely. I'm Jess Jones, CamaPlan team member and your podcast host. This week, we're thrilled to be joined by two very special guests. Michael Dershem, also known as Dersh, is a highly seasoned entrepreneur in strategic business development and planning, capital and financial sourcing, multidisciplinary problem solving, and technology development. With an entrepreneurial career spanning over 20 years, Dersh has experienced business development in just about every stage. From co-owning the largest pharmaceutical returns company in the nation, to forming a niche banking company, to serving as a founding CEO of an Emory University startup that successfully raised $25 million in private equity funding for executing research and development and was acquired by Gilead Sciences for $11 billion. Currently, he is the CEO of MAPay, a global healthcare technology firm and leader in healthcare payment processing. He's joined by John Parker, a managing member of MAPay. He is also the co-managing partner of Gen Counsel LLC, a professional services firm where he specializes in strategic advisory and being an attorney for technology, SaaS or SaaS, and cloud computing firms, and is also the president and director of smart home technology provider RC1 Incorporated, doing business as High Solutions. Mr. Parker has an extensive career in financing, advising, counseling, leading, and managing growth companies, including holding executive and leadership roles and leading strategic business transactions, mergers, acquisitions, and public and private securities offerings. So please join me in welcoming Michael Dershem and John Parker to the podcast. Hello, gentlemen. Thank you so much for being here today.
Thanks, Jess.
Greetings,
Thanks
Jess.
for having us.
Thank you both for being here. I'm excited to get to talk to two guests today and kind of have a roundtable discussion about your different leadership roles and what you've both been through in business, because it's been a lot. So let's start from the beginning. Can you both tell me a bit more about your individual backgrounds, where you were born, grew up, went to school, and studied, and all of that?
Who do you want to go first, Jess?
Let's start with Michael.
Okay. Well, thanks again, Jess, for having us. We're really excited.
I'm excited to have you both here.
So the irony of where I grew up in central Pennsylvania in a landlocked town called Jersey Shore, which now I live in New Jersey, so it's kind of ironic. And it's good cocktail conversation at times too. And then I went on to a small liberal arts school, Dickinson College in Carlisle, PA. And then went on to get my MBA, my online MBA, when my boys were 1 and 2 years old. So that was probably one of the biggest challenges I had in my life, doing diapers and doing schoolwork. So, but no, that gives a little bit of flavor of where I grew up and my educational background.
Definitely. And John, what about you?
Sure. I grew up in New York State. Also went to college in Pennsylvania, Dickinson College, where I had the pleasure of meeting Michael, and we began a long friendship and collaboration in business. I live in southeastern Pennsylvania. It's been my home for the last 30 plus years, and it's great to have the opportunity with Michael to take MAPay to heights that are going to be incredible.
Absolutely. So that answers my question about how you two first met. I also have a background in a small liberal arts Pennsylvania school. I went to Muhlenberg College, so I know Dickinson very well. So how did you then, after first meeting, what drew you two to decide to collaborate together and then eventually work at MAPay together?
Well, JP's been around me for so many years, and in a number of my different ventures, when we started MAPay, he started off as an advisor to us, both on the business side and legal side, but then it became clear very early on that that his skill sets and our background together, he's one of my true confidants. That as we grow this to a status around the globe, that we need somebody like JP, at the my right hand.
I think too. I mean, thank you, Michael, for that. I think it's very important as you're launching an initiative like this, for the leaders of the business to be able to have the kind of relationship that they can be honest with each other and be real about
Definitely.
the challenges that you face and how you overcome them. And I think our relationship, being what it is a great conduit to be successful in business. And it's never a straight line. So you've got to be nimble, and you have to be able to communicate very clearly.
Definitely. So then how did you, kind of going off script too, because I'm interested in, the relationship that you've both had over the years. How have you developed your problem solving techniques together or as individuals?
I think some of it just comes naturally, because of the long-standing nature. But I think too, what JP brings to the table for myself, I mean, we understand that, what we don't need in the room is just yes people, right? That, hey, whatever Dersh says, Dersh goes. That's not the way we roll here. Sometimes, JP will go, Dersh, you're totally sideways on that one, and, or pull me off the ledge and say, hey, let's think through this. And those are challenges at early stages of the business, as well as now, in these next capital raises, and as we're opening up other nodes across the globe. These are important decisions that are made in all those forks, and you rely on those people that are around you to help guide you.
I think strong business personalities like Michael, who has the background that he has, whether he intends to or not, can steamroll people because of they're impressed by him, and so the kind of relationship that we have, I can kind of stand up to that, but really take a holistic view of the business, right? So give Michael a wide range of context. And then he makes great decisions, right? So, that's kind of my role is to look at things holistically and help him see things through a wider lens.
Because oftentimes, Jess, I mean, you'll hear me say this quite a bit. I mean, in business we play a game of three-dimensional chess. That's who we are, and we're looking, up, down, all around. Making decisions on marketplace, making decisions on tech, making decisions on personnel, where we're going, and looking at our competition, looking at the marketplace. And so it's fun, right? But it also, JP knows the complicated nature of my brain, and
can make sure it's an asset, not a liability, Michael.
That's right.
Well, thank you both for answering that. I think it gives me a lot of color to the nature of your relationship, but it also, I think, really sets the stage for the ways in which you've both figured out how problem solving works best for you over the years. Michael, for you, how has your initial experience in technology transfer, especially fields like government, university research, these big institutions, how have they impacted the way that you view investing and capital raising? As this is part of your background, and I find that stuff always has a carryover in strange but interesting ways how things can be applicable in the future.
Yeah. No, it's it's pretty interesting for me, especially when I talk about what we've done with government research and university type research, and really building bridges to the private sector and commercializing those technologies. I think one of the biggest things that I say, Jess, out there, and I coined this many years ago, people have a tendency to do a technology push, what I mean is, hey, if we build a better mousetrap and we just push it out there, somebody's going to buy it. We've always taken the notion that let's do a marketplace pool. Let's understand what the marketplace wants, and let's build into that marketplace, or build a service into that marketplace. And I think that's what we did effectively, when we looked at some of the things that we initially did with government labs. What were things in the private sector that we had assets in government labs that we could leverage and bring to the market? And the same thing with university tech. I often joke about it. Nobody at Merck right now is going to be searching, oh, I wonder what this university has in this area, and it's just never going to happen. But the idea that you're able to understand what assets you have within those labs, and then match that to the marketplace, or even move research into the marketplace area, I think that's one of the key aspects that I've learned, and we continue to do that today, even outside of even at MAPay today, understanding what the marketplace is asking for and building into that.
That's great. Thank you for answering that. I think it really provides me with some more insight on the strategy that goes into. It's more than just research. There's a whole bunch of outside factors that really affect the way that you view research and implement research. John, for you have a legal background, which I think is really interesting. So how did you decide then to focus on growth-oriented technology, SaaS, cloud computing firms for Gen Counsel?
A serious case of adult ADD. Probably is the simplest answer. No, it's my relationships with close friends like Michael and clients over the years that have led me down the path that I've chosen, and it's been a privilege to have had an opportunity to work with the people that I have over the years. So it's really a reflection of the people that I'm around more than any strategic direction to kind of head off here into software or cloud or fintech. Automation. It's really the people around me that have pulled me in these directions.
That's really interesting. I like that answer a lot, because I think it's true for a lot of people, whether it's in business like this or in, people drawn to artistic projects or things like that. You're drawn to people just as much as you are to. Yeah, exactly.
People make it happen. People make the great opportunities happen. It's not just financial tech that's great. It's the people around it and their experiences that bring it to life.
Well, and I think, JP, you hit it on the head. I mean, we've been in rooms where, we get that first breakthrough, and other board members or investors will say, it's our game to lose now, right? Which means the marketplace is set. There are going to be a couple winners. Are we going to be one of those winners? That's
extremely interesting. With that, I love that response, because it leads me to my next question as well. For both of you, you both have the privilege of meeting in college, which I think is really interesting, because I feel like at 22, I definitely shouldn't have gone into business with anybody I knew. So I think it's really interesting that you both had each other. But were there anybody else or any other outside mentors or sources or anything that drew you to this industry in general, or got you thinking about technology and the technology space and research there?
Well, I grew up in a small business family, entrepreneurial. So, we always had that bent to us. I had, even in high school, playing multiple sports. I had a chimney sweeping business, sold shoes door to door, just crazy stuff, right? But I would say, when I look back, and I tell this story, from time to time, that one of my mentors, when I just came out of school, we were talking one night, and he was a friend of one of my one of a friend that I went to college with, and he said, "You know what, Dersh?" He said, business is better than baseball. I said, okay, Tom, give me that one. He said, in baseball, you hit the ball 3 out of 10 times, you're in the Hall of Fame. In business, you hit it 1 out of 10, you're in the Hall of Fame. Business is better than baseball. So I agree with that, and we've been fortunate enough to have a couple hits, but no, I think that that was something that always sticks with me. That even when you take the risk as an entrepreneur, I think JP would agree with me. We take controlled risk. We're not Wile E. Coyote, hanging out of the side of the cliff, right? Just waiting for, the wind to fall. We're taking controlled risk. We're taking measured risk. And I think we're prudent and pragmatic about it. And, that's what, leads us to building successful companies.
And to show a little bit of the healthy tension Michael and I have, I actually like baseball more than business, but it's close. I'm also shaped by, being a team sport athlete in high school and college. You learn right away, to take the mentorship that coaches bring you. And even when the coaches stop talking to you or yelling at you, in my case, that means they don't care about you anymore, right? So had the, incredible privilege in growing up in a couple of different industries, banking first, then big law in Philadelphia with Morgan Lewis, and be surrounded by a lot of extraordinarily talented people that I would watch and go into new careers and succeed outside of banking or law, right? So that for me, there are a number of role models that did what I kind of aspired to do, and then you find the opportunities where they exist. And this one with Michael's being very modest. He's been in and around the medical technology field for a long time, and he sees things that aren't obvious to the rest of us. And they might seem like little cracks, and you look at them closer and you realize they're big opportunities. So, being able to help Michael with this one's really cool.
Yeah, that's incredible. Especially, I think it, again, speaks to your partnership as well, that you can see within, not the cracks in the armor, but the, underneath all that modesty, there's a lot of accolades that you, John, can share. So I think that's great and you're obviously in a point of major success and growing businesses and things like that now. But I know for a fact, not everybody always starts out that way. It's always a journey. It's there's an evolution there. So for you both, what are some of and you've both had experience in business development and leadership, these major transactions with millions of dollars on many different levels. So what are some of the lessons that you've learned throughout those experiences that you were able to kind of pick up and continue to use going forward to either, I'm not going to make that mistake again, or, hey, this is actually great, I'm going to implement this in the future?
Mike, mind if I go first on this one?
Yeah, go ahead.
So I mean, a good analogy is baseball, right? I love baseball. Back to that.
I'll bring up business.
If you're afraid,
there it is, that balancing act.
Yeah, if you're afraid of getting caught, you'll never steal a base, right? You just won't. You'll never be a base stealer if you're afraid of getting caught. And in business, particularly on the entrepreneurial side, you'll never succeed if you're afraid of failure. We've all had failures in our business careers, things that didn't work out for a whole host of reasons, right? And so you have to have that in mind when you get started. You can't be afraid of failing. By the same token, you learn. I mean, you learn so much when something doesn't work. So I think, both of us have had that, experience to be part of winners and also ones that didn't work out. And that helps really guide where we go with MAPay.
I think what excites me, Jess, is every one of our startups or new businesses. It's like it truly is like a new baby to me, right? And even what was it, JP? 4 years ago when we did the first transaction on MAPay. So we did one transaction at $36.69. It went through the network. We reconciled it, it was one of the happiest days. Besides having my kids and getting married, one of the happiest days of my life. And some of the other stuff. But you sit there as an entrepreneur and you go, boom, that worked. Cool. Now where do we go? And so, I look back at some of these things and I go, they go, Dersh, how can you get so pumped up about, a $30 payment? Well, there was a lot of work that went into doing that. And then when we look at technology, then we look for investors. We like to say we like to take the build risk away. So we took the build risk away. We knew it worked, right? We then captured our first customer. So then we captured our second customer. One of the biggest things in tech, that you worry about as an investor or is this stuff ever going to work, right? Are we ever going to get any customers? Is anybody going to ever pay for it? And JP and I have always taken a stance, on most everything that we will take out that build risk before we bring it out, into the investment market. And that's what we did. That's what, some of those big milestones are. And so, those are the things that I look back on where the other big thing I look back on, Jess, is, I always say business is dynamic. We wrote a business model within MAPay, probably the first formal one 3.5 years ago, 4 years ago. Mm-hmm. And we may have had an eye to the global markets, but really everything was based on domestic healthcare payment transactions and making that through. And then also a better way for the consumer to pay healthcare bills and understand them. And then, lo and behold, I give a speech in Bermuda, and the next thing you know, 18 months later, we were the first company ever to sign an entire country under an agreement to handle all their healthcare payments. And then we just made another announcement 3 weeks ago with Algorand, where we were looking to move this then from our transactional technology today into a blockchain related type of fabric, which is exciting not only for us but also for the globe. And now when we're looking at different nodes across the globe, my point is that, just as, and not to put ourselves in the arena as Jeff Bezos, but just as Bezos, when he first was selling his first books or DVD, he probably didn't dream that he was going to be doing space launches or dropping off Keurig K-cups on drones, right? And that's how we think sometimes. Like JP said, when we see cracks or we see opportunities, the guard and the tackle opening up for the running, we just, we see it and we got to go, and it's pretty exciting.
Yeah, it certainly sounds like it, and it sounds like I really appreciate that most guests on this podcast, I think if not all of our guests, have really said that the best way of learning is through that trial and error, through that failure. And then therefore those successes, those $36 payments feel like so much more of a payoff. So I really appreciate both of your responses to that. Can you talk a bit more about MAPay itself? What does the company do? Who is a typical client? And for both of you, what drew you to the healthcare payment processing as being the focus for developing this?
Would you like me to go, Jen?
Yeah, I would, please.
So we're a global healthcare fintech company. So what, as we unpack all of that, what does that mean? So we have both a B2B enterprise type of offering, and then we have a B2C offering. In our B2B, we would work with insurance payers, and those payers could be insurance companies, government payers, and the movement of that money to providers, right? And bi-directional. And then also we work on the consumer side to be able to provide the consumer a way to pay all of their healthcare bills in one spot, and we have a whole roadmap that we're doing on that consumer facing brand Medspedia that will bring a community of medical components to consumers that is unprecedented. And then lastly, Like I said, we're working with countries now, working on healthcare spend, data interoperability, and at the end of the day, our kind of last slide statement is, $3.2 trillion worth of healthcare spend across the globe. If we can impact that by even 10 to 15%, that's close to $320 billion that we're able to free up. That goes a long way for vaccines and underserved children and all that type of stuff. So that, I think at the end of the day, that's what pumps us up, because we know that if we can move the needle on the payment side and reduce that friction and cost, it opens up a lot of opportunity for providing better healthcare outcomes.
I mean, MA, just to be clear, MA Pay is a big idea. I mean, it's a very, very big idea. And, we have the opportunity to really impact people's lives, make healthcare more affordable, right, which allows the healthcare dollars to be spread across more causes, again, which really gets to improving the quality of people's lives. And if we do that, we'll also have a very successful company, right? So the two go, hand in hand. So it's rewarding not only building a great company, which turns us on for sure, but it's the ability to impact people's lives. On top of that, that's really a cool thing.
Yeah, and I bet that's something that really keeps you both moving forward too, even when things feel discouraging or anything like that. I think having a goal for the greater good like that in mind really, I think, helps motivate people. I think.
Well, and Jess, here's the alignment. We will be a successful company only if we do that. So those two things in our case, in this business, are mutually inclusive.
Yeah, and we look at things like the pandemic and COVID, coming into it, it was, of course, for every business, nearly every business, it was a disaster. We were negotiating on our B round. We were doing our first transactions in Bermuda. We were bringing on some large enterprise clients, and everything went to dry powder, and all healthcare was shuttered unless it was related to COVID. But what I said to the management team and what I said to employees, I said, what, let's stay relevant. It was there's no, and JP and I joke about this all the time. There's nothing in your, in a book from your MBA where you go, oh, I remember chapter 14, how to get through a pandemic. Let me just dust that off, read those couple pages, boom, we're out of it, right? But what we did, Jess, and I think when the story is finally told about MAPay, that the pandemic has become a catalyst for our business, that we've become relevant in the senior suite of multiple types of healthcare providers. I don't care if it's the drug manufacturer, the retailer, major healthcare systems, or other types of enterprise types of providers. Each one of those has their own separate value proposition why they come with us. But here's the point. COVID has challenged every business leader to change, oftentimes, their business models in healthcare, their access points, and some things that you might have had the luxury to just put up with, maybe on the expense side, we'll fix that someday. We don't have that luxury anymore. And so we're able to look at our payment network as a solution. And so when we sit in the CXO suite, whether it be with big pharma, big retail, big health institutions, they have issues and ones that we fix, and that's what's satisfying. And now looking back and saying, man, it's only been, I don't think anybody's out of the woods yet who knows about all these variants and everything else, but it was only recently, JP, that we were able to take a little bit of a sigh and say, we think we weathered the storm.
Yeah, it's one of these subjects that's going to be great to look at in retrospect. When your business is driven by medical transactions and 95% of them stop, it's kind of a pretty sobering experience. But I think that we will clearly look at this period as being an accelerator, in terms of innovation and adoption. And I think it's a testament to kind of not just MAPay, but our country's entrepreneurial spirit, that we were able to kind of overcome so many of the challenges. And in healthcare and in regulated environments like governments, they tend to be slow to adopt technological change, even when it's in their best interest. But with COVID, they didn't have a choice. And so it's kind of pushed forward the innovation curve quite a ways. And we're the beneficiaries as a business of those developments.
Yeah, we used to say pre-COVID, even if somebody just wanted to do credit card processing, e-check processing with us, Jess, we would quote them 3 to 4 weeks, to get them up on our platform. And with everybody, turning on a dime to telehealth and prescription delivery and contactless commerce, and you had staff working at home, you had patients, at home, you had doctors working from home, and they had no way to do, an efficient as well as compliant transaction, right? And we stepped up. I then announced that we will have anybody up within a week. We then said 3 to 5 days. And then at the height of the pandemic, I said 24 hours, anybody can ride our rail. We will take the underwriting risk of anybody that needs to take a payment, and we will have you up within 24 hours. Now, our tech team didn't really like me for announcing that, but hey, that's why they pay me the little bucks. But that was important, and I think when we were able to do that, and we were able to have a process for patients and providers and build that in a real digital engagement in the expediency that we were able to do. Now people look at us and say, what else can you do for us?
I think that's extremely interesting. And what a question that brings up for me is what goes into a decision like that? Is that something that you feel like came with experience over time as being leaders, or was it a product of what was happening in the world at the time, or what compels you to make a really big leap of faith in terms of that, in terms of a decision like that? I'm sure you did your homework on that.
But yeah, of course. Of course we knew we could do it before.
Right.
The last thing we want to do is mismanage expectations. But,
right.
But no, so talking internally, can we do it, right? And knowing that the market, remember when I was saying about marketplace pool? Does the marketplace need it? And would it make a splat, and would it make a statement to a lot of legacy big time processors, right? And say, hey, we're here. We know healthcare, we know medical commerce, we know the pain points that are going on right now, and we're stepping up to it. And hey, that's the way we look at it. Sometimes there were some Davy versus Goliath type moments, and fortunately we slew the dragon. Is that a mixed metaphor, JP?
I'm trying to figure it out. No, I think, look, it's the entrepreneur's dream. When there's dislocation in any market, it presents opportunity. And, that's when you got to strike. And we just are really well positioned with this business right now to take advantage of the dynamics that have resulted. We were going to be successful anyhow. For sure. So, but a pandemic can kill a business, right? I mean, it's killed a bunch of businesses. I think for us, it's opened maybe a couple more doors and maybe accelerated things. But we're very fortunate for that.
Right, and then in turn, you're able to kind of pay it forward to the consumer side as well, which I think is an incredible an incredible model.
Core part of the mission.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly. John, for you, I mean, you've held a number of various different types of positions of leadership. So, and Dersh, same to you. Like, how did you develop your leadership styles? Did that kind of come along over time, or I know how you both work together, but how did what independent work have you had to do over the years to determine, this is a quality I have in me, I can lead?
I think leadership chooses you to some, I think when people go try to, be leaders, maybe it doesn't sink, right? So leadership is just always chosen both of us, for me, whatever career I've been in. But I think my style of leadership has been shaped by all the people that I've worked for over the years, and have had the privilege to learn, from them. And if your ears are open and your mind is, alert, it can't help but rub off on you. So for me, it's all a product of the people that I've been around.
Yeah, that's excellent. I think, it comes back to your original point too about, how you got into the fields that you did when establishing Gen Counsel. It comes back to your network and the people that you've formed lasting relationships with. So
no doubt.
I think that's great. For both of you then, in terms of what you're able to do with MAPay right now, do you work with clients or consumers or anybody basically involved in the self-directed IRA space? Because I think it's extremely interesting that health savings account exists. It's something I did not know about before I started working at CamaPlan. And that's just one of the ways that healthcare and retirement are one of the many ways it's all so related. So I'm curious about how it's affected your business.
Well, it's interesting you say that because we're working now with some of the top HSA providers in the country, because there's in a portion of their business, it's a total dysfunctional way of getting payments between themselves, providers, and the consumer. And prior to MAPay coming into the tent, there was little or no alternatives. So I think going back to what I said about where they don't have the liberty or luxury to have that type of dysfunction anymore, it plays right into our hand. What's also interesting for us, just from an investment standpoint, by using self-directed IRAs, we've been successful, and John and I've been around CamaPlan for many years, and most recently with this convertible note offering that we have now at MAPay, we've had investors use CamaPlan for the first time. In those investors using it for the first time, and it's worked out extremely well. So we were excited about providing that as an option to them, and I think it's worked well both ways. So we see it both on our biz dev front, but also too then just on the CamaPlan mechanics, being able to be investors for us.
I have other clients that have successfully used CamaPlan, so I was familiar with the firm even before we looked at it with MAPay. But I would say the diversification opportunity that you provide an investor is awesome. There's the ability to have toes in the water with emerging businesses like MAPay is an awesome service that you provide to the clients. And we're thankful to be able to be part of that and give investors the opportunity to take our ride and see capital appreciate as we build this company.
Yeah, I think it's interesting that it's in the title, self-directed, and that's what we try to educate people on. Is you want to be able to grow a portfolio, find your niche, for sure, but diversification is a huge part of retirement planning and earning passive income. So for people like yourselves who are able to provide a convertible note like that to clients, I think it's just really interesting the ways that people, there's so many options out there and we're only scratching the surface of just how many ways people can actually have control over their future wealth. So I think it's really great that you you found ways to contribute to that.
Let me add one other point too, which is, when Michael and I and our other advisors and board members devised our capital raising strategy, we decided not to go down like an institutional route, like a venture firm or a private equity firm. And lots of reasons for that, which I won't bore you with. So having a component of the capital raise filled by CamaPlan is really a great value to us, in building our capital stack.
How has that capital raising strategy evolved for you both, especially when it comes to MA Pay?
Yeah, we really wanted to attract investors that were savvy, to the healthcare space. Not necessarily payments, although non-exclusive of payments, but really savvy to the healthcare space, because they provide a great sounding board to the management team, or maybe a better way to say it, a sanity check to the management team, in terms of kind of where our dreams are. So. Right. We thought that was a smarter approach to raising capital than going the institutional way. We didn't really think, many institutions can bring financial management and strategy and some other, things to the table. We didn't really feel like we needed that to launch this business, but having industry-specific experience on our investor team was very valuable.
Yeah, I think, and it also speaks to the fact that there are so many individuals who can diversify their portfolio, there are so many options out there to diversify. People themselves are diverse. They're different. So what works for someone, an institutional route, a private equity firm that is more institutional, or yourselves, on the opposite end, it depends on kind of, I think, what an investor is drawn to. So being able to provide another option like that for someone too, with the understanding that investors are going to be different, is also a great opportunity that you're providing investors with as well. So that's incredible. I mean, for both of you too, I'm interested in the fact that you've both been involved with some giant business acquisitions and transitions and having to navigate those. Could you both just kind of walk me through and how this is different for either of you, the different stages of, I know like John, you've founded businesses, Michael, you founded businesses. What are the stages like to kind of, all right, I'm establishing this company and I know I'll ensure growth. And then what is it like, second part of the question, to watch that company grow over time? Third part of the question, what's it like to navigate a large acquisition or transaction like the ones you've both navigated before? I'll try to remember the three parts if we lose track.
Let me write those down so I hit them.
I'm hoping I get one and Michael gets two.
Yes. So first part, how do you establish a business and with the understanding or with the due diligence, I guess, to kind of ensure that growth will occur when starting a business?
You can't.
Yeah.
You got to hope you're right, and you got to hope you're nimble and make the right decisions as you grow. The taking an idea, and starting a business, and then launching it for its first 3 to 5 years. It's probably the most fun stage of any business. You can devise a strategy at 10 a.m. and you've implemented it at 2. And by 5, you might realize whether it's successful or not, right? That's just the nature of the short cycles of growth businesses. But it's incredibly, fun. That's the joy Michael and I get. As the business matures, you need to add different processes and people so that you can, kind of scale the business and then ultimately to a transaction. And they're very distinct stages that you go through. And but for me, having done some big deals, Michael's done big deals too. The fun is in the early years.
Yeah, I would say the fun and the ultimate stress, or that. But you know what? That's the juice that gets you up in the morning. right?
Right, that early stage is the most creative time, too. Your mind has a lot of places to wander.
JP knows that if he's not getting an email at 3 a.m. about something I thought of, that something's wrong with Dersh, like what's going on? But that's just, you kind of, you're all in, and then for me, I'm in it for ourselves and employees, but I'm in it for the marketplace. I'm in it especially for our investors. To see these wins and be able to keep on building upon it. And then I think ultimately, as you know, I was responsible for the founding of the hepatitis C company, Pharmaset, and I think one of the greatest things that happens to me is when somebody in the community that doesn't know your business background or what you do in business, say you're coaching their kid in baseball or whatever, and I had one come up to me and she, and I knew her for years, and she said, Dersh, and she was teary-eyed and she hugged me, and she said, you were instrumental in saving my mother. And I said, Judy, and she said she had hepatitis C and took the drugs that were all too far. So, Jess, those are some of the, and like JP said, what we're doing at MAPay and our strategy, to build value props for all stakeholders, and then be able to build this community of users and really change the dynamic of healthcare and its delivery. That's the legacy that drives me every day, and that's who we are as entrepreneurs.
Yeah, that's great. That's excellent to hear from both of you. And forgive me if you feel like you've already answered this portion of the question, but like, how do you keep your cool, I guess, or know that you've made a right decision when it comes to these major acquisitions for however many millions of dollars, when I have a very basic understanding of what a business acquisition actually looks like or what goes into it. So as two people who have been on the other side, what is that experience like mentally, and how do you combat it? How do you get yourself through it without ever second guessing? Or, I mean, I'm sure it's a learning curve, but.
You want to go first?
I don't know. You just hope that, the ink dries and everything turns out okay. But,
yeah.
I think, and that's, I think if we do this right, we're going to be making some of those, really big decisions within MAPay. And JP and I have this conversation all the time. Dersh, would you walk, if somebody did this? And I said, to me, if we can't get to this, our vision of what we feel we can be impactful for every global citizen, because we call it human care, not healthcare.
Yes.
It's going to take, I don't even know what the price tag would have to be, because that I think is important in those types of transactions where they continue to fulfill the dream that you had as the initial entrepreneur around it.
And I think that's the segue to continue to build the dream. I mean, it's the decision to enter into a big deal is based, in part on intellect and research, and it's a lot based on gut.
Yeah.
And your instinct that the time is right or the partner is right, and then you hope it works out, for the best. I mean, big organizations are run differently than smaller dynamic, organizations, and sometimes when the deal happens, the smaller company takes off because of the investment that they're able to make and infrastructure the bigger company brings to the table. Other times they kill it because they drown it or they smother it, maybe better put. So I think on the strategic side, so separate and apart from M&A, on the strategic side, these big deals are oftentimes very natural because there's there's alignment, right, of the assets that one party has with the innovation the other party has, and 2 + 2 = 7, right? So it's a natural thing, and they're a little bit different. M&A and strategic are a lot different.
That's really interesting, and I like the way you both have framed that as continuing to build the dream or building upon the dream. And the older I get, I learn that gut is really something I shouldn't take for granted. It's nothing insignificant. And I think that it's as a person who's newer to this field, as someone who, wants to look at diversifying my own portfolio, it's something that I think as an investor have to consider. Is like my gut plays a role in it.
It definitely does. Typically, if you do the right things, you're going to have the right financial outcome. If you get focused on the financial outcome, you're going to forget to do the right things, or you're going to miss things, and it's going to undermine your financial outcome. So, I think we've all seen, not just in our own careers, but also people that we've watched, the people that do the right things have, great financial outcomes.
Yeah, thank you both for sharing that and for being so honest with those answers. I think it's a relatively difficult question to ask. What does it feel like to make a huge decision in your life on a podcast in the middle of the day on a Tuesday? But you both answered it, I think, extremely well, and that it really it speaks to the head and the heart the way you have to make decisions like that. It's not just one or the other, can't win out. So thank you both. What for you? Are there any tools or resources that you both use, especially in the medical industry, especially as you both mentioned in a year like COVID, where there is no textbook you can pick up and figure out how to navigate a pandemic? Is there anything that you both use to keep up with your knowledge of the industry? How has it changed over the course of the career?
No, I think the easy one, Jess, is, and I'll probably date myself, right? But business careers and research, prior to the internet, even trying to get competitors' materials, right? If you're able to, scoop in at a conference and grab somebody's brochure, right, in the middle of the night, now you can just look up everything they do online, right? If you're doing, if you're going after a big customer, you'd have to, buy a few shares so that you could get their annual report and read through it, right? Now it's all available online. So I think, we use, at least myself, I'm a constant reader. I think the pandemic, I could only scroll through Netflix and Amazon Prime, too many times. So, and I enjoy business reading. I enjoy looking at the market. I look, both domestically and globally, and then, throw it out to, JP and, the others on our inner circle and say, hey, what do you think about this? How do we position against this? Here's an idea around this. So that, I just like to keep myself immersed in all kinds of reading, healthcare, finance, startup, payments, business in general.
Yeah, I'll never forget how I was disappointed at my college graduation. When the keynote speaker said, your education had just begun. So I'm thinking, damn, I've just spent all these years in school looking forward to getting out, away from education. So just to trumpet what Michael said, I think, read, and I try to be kind of holistic in what I read. I read a lot of financial press naturally, which I'm attracted to. But I just think you have to just stay current with what's going on in the world, so you can put everything kind of into context. And then industry-specific things. In this case, I lean on Michael because he's really, the expert in terms of what's going on in the healthcare world. So it's easy for me to kind of follow healthcare because Michael, is my kind of editor, so to speak.
Great. So then and I do want to talk a bit about this as well with both of you. What have your experiences then taught you about the blockchain investments that you mentioned in the digital space? What questions do you think people should be asking themselves? This is a new medium in the healthcare space, as you both mentioned to me. So what has this taught you, and what do you think people should be educating themselves on?
Yeah, it's a great question, Jess. And we get that all the time, and it's one that's going to continue to evolve. But I think first and foremost, our listeners, and when I talk on the stage, there's a difference between blockchain, distributed ledger technology, kind of the plumbing itself, and then this whole notion of cryptocurrencies and Bitcoin and Ether and Dogecoin and Litecoin and every other coin, right? So you have to distinguish the two of them, and so I remember back when I started to speak at blockchain related conferences, you'd have, just like in Internet 1.0. You had that, you had those zealots that were out there. You had those, just sprinkle some pixie dust and the sea is going to split and blockchain's going to fix everything, right? And it's just not the case. But, there are some real applications that we're working on now that are real game changers. And then our whole vision around digital asset and digital currency for healthcare. And smart contracts. I think that's something that is going to be key, not only domestically but globally going forward. I think we're as forward as anybody else around the globe with our engagements, and I think even when we look at, if I was an investor looking at asset diversification, when I look at a company like ours you're touching into that world with, but also under a framework of a company, not just, hey, is Dogecoin something that's going to actually work someday, or is that still false, right? And then you also have, this whole area of what's called non-fungible tokens and NFTs, which, from a business application standpoint, data application standpoint, are very interesting to us. So stay tuned on that. But, that's, I think that, just like, my wife says, Dersh, will I be walking down the street and I get hit by something, and say, oh, that's blockchain, right? No, it's not. It's the same thing when you're, if you remember when we used to send an email and then you'd have to send an invite, and now that goes into your account. I don't know how all that packet switching or goes on underneath it. All I know is that, Jess, you sent me an invite and it was ubiquitous, right? I said accept. So and I think that's what happens, in some of these things within distributed ledger technology, where we can capture those economies and efficiencies for healthcare and healthcare data exchange and payments. But I'm also, we are in the midst and forward thinking, and some of the thought leaders around a digital asset for healthcare payments.
I have to laugh because it's been my observation that technology suffers from jargon, too much jargon, right? What are all these terms? What do all these terms mean? I kind of simplified a little bit. I look at the internet being a commerce or a content platform, and I think blockchain, ultimately is the commerce platform. And I think that if people are interested in learning about blockchain tech, that's where they should kind of focus. The noise is around the crypto stuff, but I think long term, blockchain is going to change the world from a commerce perspective, and create so much efficiency, in how we move money around and pay for goods and services. that's where the power of blockchain is going to be felt over the medium and long term.
Wow. Thank you both. That was extremely interesting because I intentionally didn't do too much looking into what blockchain actually was because I wanted to learn something from both of you, and I really did. So I appreciate that. So that kind of answers pretty much all of my, individual questions I have for both of you. But one of the questions that I do ask all of our guests here on the podcast is, what would you say are your keys to building wealth and unlocking your financial freedom? For both of you, this does not have to be a financial response in any way, but what is something that has informed the way that each of you look at your unique definitions of the word success and what that means to you?
Look, I'll go first. I think you got to follow your heart, and your brain. I think that if you're intellectually interested, emotionally interested in, a subject, you're going to likely have more insight into that subject, right? And so being able to pick investments or stay away from things because you're very knowledgeable and passionate about it. And then, temper your passions and get advice from third parties who might look at things a little differently and maybe point out a blind spot you have if you're too emotionally attracted to a particular investment or sector. I think that kind of combination, from my observation over the years, has been very successful.
I don't think success, I know it's cliche-ish, but I don't think it happens overnight. I think it's a bit of a journey, and there's going to be some peaks and troughs along the way. But I think at the end of the day, I think if you're nervous or lose sleep about a particular investment, I don't think that's a good thing. I know, just in my, I think that diversification is great. I think the ability to have different asset classes and believe that those asset classes can perform as they've done historically, and that would include, an introduction to other types of alternative investments, like the ones within CamaPlan.
Well, thank you both. I really appreciate you both taking the time to share your stories and discuss your strategic ways of thinking and how you've developed them over the years. And I really just appreciate you both taking the time to share not only your knowledge, but your passions with us today. One final question before we go is, how can people reach both of you? Do you have websites, social medias, anything like that listeners can use to get in touch with you if they have more questions for each of you or MAPay?
Yeah, for MAPay, our corporate website is mapaycorp, mapaycorp.com. And you can also just email me at Dersh, DERSH, at mapay.com.
Great. Awesome. Thank you both so much again for being here. I really appreciated you both taking the time. And for all of you listening, please be on the lookout for more CamaPlan events that feature Dersh, John, and MAPay. But until then, thank you everyone for joining us this week on the road to financial freedom. Be sure to tune in next week to hear more from our experts who have paved their roads to financial freedom, or call CamaPlan today to learn how you can start to take control of your future wealth. Thank you again, Dersh. Thank you again, John. And have a great rest of your day.
Thank you for having us.
Thanks, Jess.
Thank you all for tuning into our podcast. We truly hope that you're enjoying your ride along the road to financial freedom so far. If you like what you've heard and learned, or if you want to hear more about certain topics that we may have already covered or have yet to cover, please subscribe, rate, and leave us a review. We would love to hear any feedback from you so that we may continue to make our podcast the best that it can be for you, our listeners. Thanks again, everyone, and remember, tune in next week to the road to financial freedom.